That's embarrassing. I've been really bad tonight, guys, on the camera job. Part of that's because StreamYard keeps on changing the way they do things, which, by the way, half of you might be watching on the vertical view right now. Let me know how you like that. I don't know. I've seen people doing live on the vertical thing now more, kind of like I guess maybe it pops up when they're doing the shorts feed. Maybe that's YouTube's thought process behind that. I'm not sure, but I just figured like why not? I will test that out. But I see the chat is already popping. I know some of you just came from the previous stream. This was a double feature Monday night green room, although this is more of a biblical anarchy live than a green room, but it's still a green room. We have a very strange. We have so many shows here, by the way. I didn't do this on the last stream, so I'm going to do it now before I get into tonight's subject. But I'm Jacob Winograd. For those of you who are coming here just for tonight's topic and aren't usual subscribers, I'm the host of the Biblical Anarchy podcast, as I have on my little whiskey glass here, although it's not whiskey in here tonight. I'm not going to be like Dave and drink whiskeys late at night for my live streams. Just to take I can make that joke about Dave because we're friends. I'll give him grief about that. So, but we have a lot of shows here at the Libertarian Christian Institute, and I'm not the only host here. We have a whole slew of hosts who come from different perspectives. I'm sometimes actually the minority when it comes to, and I made a post today, was it yesterday? I forget now. It's been a weird past 24 hours. But when it comes to certain things, I'm the minority view here at LCI. And I try to keep that in mind when I'm forward facing for the organization. But I want you guys to check out all of our hosts and contributors and writers here. We, of course, have our books. Working on, by the way, the second one of the announcements I have for tonight is that we're working on the second edition of Faith Seeking Freedom. The first edition was written before I joined LCI, but the second edition that'll be coming out probably like Q2 of next year, and we've expanded from 100 questions up to about 225 or 230 questions, and the reason I wanted to bring that up in this stream is that actually a couple of the questions deal with this whole debate about public property, which kind of popped off 2 years ago as a result of the origins of this kind of feud between Dave and I guess Liquid Zulu, but all the open border libertarians. So I'm going to read some of the comments here, and then we'll kind of get into things. The ZZ, I've had like everyone at LCI and even just some of my more normie friends who follow me asking me to explain this, and it got like I think by the fifth time I had to explain what this was a reference to. I was just like because it's like I don't know how to explain it in just like I could just tell you it says Zale Zulu, and then it's like, well, what does that mean? It's like so anyway, it's funny. I'm sorry, Hody. It's not my fault. You gotta choose me or Dungeons and Dragons. But I was ambitious tonight and tried to do 2 live streams, so had a bit of a late start. Geode says I should probably watch the remainder of that video, about 2.5 hours left, but might set that to the side. I definitely recommend watching the entire thing. It was very well produced, and even the parts I don't entirely agree with, I think it's worth listening to. Zale Zulu, maybe. You'll have to wait and see. I take a step forward, and here I am again, like a replicated duplicate. Thanks for joining the stream, Conrail. I see a lot of Zale Zulus in the chat. Winograd is definitely one of the better Christian anarchists. I appreciate that. I don't know who are the bad Christian anarchists. I feel like we're all okay. But Zulu said, I've seen people multi-streaming a vertical stream to TikTok at the same time. I have an OBS plugin to do it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I know people can stream the TikTok too. That's probably a way to do that with StreamYard. W stream, glad there's a discussion happening. Thanks, Monhop. I appreciate the $3 super chat there. From Zulu. All right. Let's get into this. So for those of you who don't, I don't know who's here who doesn't know what we're talking about tonight, but there was a 2.5, sorry, no, 3.5 hour video produced by Liquid Zulu, who's in the chat, and a lot of his people are here tonight to hear my take on this, uh, called "The Anatomy of a Celebritarian." By the way, just regardless of whatever you want to say about like the ideas and the disagreements here, I'm gonna glaze Zulu here a little for a little bit. Uh, just top tier production value and sort of memetics here in terms of just how you titled it and the angle of it. Kind of harkening back to Anatomy of the State, Anatomy of a Celebritarian. Very well done. The thumbnail, very, very well done. So, uh, yeah. And in terms of the content, I mean, there's so much to get into here. Half of the reason I wanted to talk about this, there's probably three reasons actually. One was that I'm kind of in there a few times because of one of the conversations I had with Dave was part of this ongoing saga. Two, I'm friends with Dave, and I feel some, I guess, affinity to defend him on certain things, but probably can concede certain things about some of the criticisms. And then thirdly, I was part of the Mises Caucus. And for those of you who don't know, I was actually a state organizer for the Mises Caucus here in my state of Pennsylvania from about 2021 ish to 2023 is when I stepped down. So I served for about 2 years, but I was active for that. Yeah, my right eye is all right. The reason my eyes might look weird, by the way, since someone brought it up, is my I wear contacts and I somehow screwed up keeping track of them, and I don't have the right prescription in this eye. I'm using an older prescription right now because it's all I had on hand, and my eye doesn't like it. So it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit swollen because of that. Uh, Now I'm going to be self conscious the whole stream. No, it's all right. I'm not perfectly symmetrical. I'm not I'm not the Darwinian Aryan model. I'm a half breed. I'm half. It's actually like a duality thing probably because I'm half German and half Jewish. So anyway, now you guys distracted me with picking on my looks. No, yeah, I was a state organizer for the Mises Caucus, and Pennsylvania, if you don't know, is like kind of the birthplace of the Mises Caucus because it's where Michael Heiss lives. I think half of the founding board of the Mises Caucus was from PA. Uh, and whatever you want to say about the caucus overall, and I know there's a lot of people who kind of try to peddle in the maybe conspiracy theories that it was like a Republican op and things like that to destroy the Libertarian Party. I mean, I was there from like ground zero, and that's just not true. And I have some disagreements with the Mises Caucus, and I do think things changed over time. And some people don't like this, but I still love pretty much all the people who are still there on the board and in leadership. They're friends of mine. I think I have a partial affinity for the caucus and for Dave because they're the ones who brought me into libertarianism. I was a Bernie bro back in like 2015. And when Trump won, it kind of shattered my political paradigm because the left went full woke and full insane, and I kind of found myself politically homeless. And what introduced libertarianism to me was a Dave Smith debate with Sam Cedar, where actually Dave didn't do super well in that debate, to be honest. Even he says that, but he introduced the concepts of like the Federal Reserve to me, and just that like there were people out there who were not leftists, who were anti-war, anti-war on drugs, and kind of speaking to issues that I, as a former progressive, resonated with. And so from Dave Smith, I kind of discovered I wanted to learn more about libertarianism, so I found a local libertarian group in my area, and that local libertarian group was literally filled with Mises Caucus members. So that's how I fell in with the Mises Caucus, and that is kind of long story short. The my origin story into libertarianism and then anarchism. And so no matter what happens, it's like, even if Dave or the Mises Caucus went like, 'cause I have criticisms for them, but I don't think they're bad people or that they're evil or anti-libertarian, but, like, it would take a lot for me to, like, lose just because, like, I'd always have that soft spot for them to be like, they were my, sort of the landing pad for me as a former progressive, former lefty, and introducing me to all of the things that, like, no matter what disagreements we have, we all love Rothbard, we all love Hoppe, we're all for free markets. We all believe in this idea of a stateless society that's governed by markets, by the non-aggression principle, and like they're the ones that introduced all these ideas to me. So it's hard for me to ever just kind of be like, I'm gonna completely turn my back on them or shit on them or hate them. So that's my bias. Just kind of putting my cards on the table right there. But it also means that this video speaks to a lot of things I was involved in various capacities. And so I have an interest in listening to it and grappling with it. I think the way I want to approach this is talk about what I think Zulu gets right on in the video and some of the topics at hand for the Mises Caucus and Dave, and then I'll kind of get into my disagreements. I think that there was actually from Zulu when some of this came out. I've had two conversations with Zulu on his show, and some of this came out there, but he said it more explicitly in this 3.5 hour video. He's critical of what the Mises Caucus has become and and their political strategy, and it definitely shifted over time. But anyone like I would speak actually to my friends who are in the Mises Caucus, and anyone who thinks that Zulu is just like an Archie Flowers or like a progressive, like woke left libertarian from like the old guard or like a Prague, he's not that. Like he's way closer for whatever negative things he says about the Mises Caucus and Dave Smith, he's way closer to our type of libertarian than to the other type of libertarian, which is what kind of makes some of the feuding a little bit silly. Uh, but so his criticisms are not like a Prague or a lefty or a woke person uh, attacking from that direction. It's kind of more of a he's one of our people in a way. He's a Rothbardian. He's an ANCAP. I don't know if he identifies as right wing, but I think he, like it, at least to me, he seems more right wing and anti woke. So I mean, he's kind of criticizing from the direction of us. So like I would encourage like even into the extent to where Zulu's criticisms might seem like he's being overly aggressive or hostile or he's like you wonder why he's like couldn't you make that I think a lot of people even me will say well couldn't he make that criticism in a way that's less aggressive, that's more good faith, that's more reconciliatory, and he probably could, and that's probably partly generational, partly temperament, probably somewhat a creative choice because let's be honest, like if you're trying to get views and clicks, coming out and being like, I have a respectable disagreement to make with Dave Smith is going to draw less attention than being like, I think Dave Smith's a poison on the liberty movement. By the way, you all should clip that and just publish it because I just said, it's funny hearing me say that out loud. Like someone's going to clip that. Uh, you're gonna get more clicks that way, and this is sort of like, the game of a creator is kind of like, on one hand, I'm sort of temperamentally someone who doesn't like to do clickbait stuff, but I've sort of started to move in that direction over time because you just realize that putting clickbait thumbnails and titles just gets more clicks, and if that's what now my approach is kinda draw them in with, like, the clickbait stuff, and then I'm generally more reasonable in the actual conversation or monologue. But but yeah, listen, on one hand, and if Dave does end up agreeing to do a debate with Zulu, like I would want Zulu to try to approach that in a way where he's not overly aggressive or hostile and that he would be open to some kind of reconciliation. Uh, but to another extent, to kind of something that Dave has said many times, and I agree with. And listen, I'm a Christian. I have a conviction to, and this is more recent. I used to not have this conviction. I generally try not to curse. That's for biblical reasons. I'm not offended if you people curse, uh, but I just choose not to. But for this, I do it only in specific instances like this one. And Dave has this thing that he always talks about, and we talk about privately, which is like, don't be a bitch, right? And there's something about this where sometimes like, and I have to say this to myself, like if someone is, we were just talking about this, me and Michael on the last stream, that like Casimir is who's buddies with Zulu, is kind of from that crowd. He'll sometimes be overly antagonistic in our X posts or our YouTube comments, and we'll kind of be like, "What the heck, man? Why are you?" But to some extent, it's like you're kind of losing if you get too aggravated or defensive. There's something about like, I don't know. I mean, there's probably a line if you're being too much of a jerk where you don't want to uh where you don't want to take people as seriously, but to some extent it's like, I don't know, like try not to be too thin-skinned about it. Is what I would say. Like if if you're going to go in and just dismiss everything Zulu says because he's like, well, he didn't say it nice enough, then that's kind of weak, isn't it? So I don't know. That's something I've heard some people say where they're just like, oh, I can't take him seriously because he's too aggressive or hostile, and I'm just like, that's not an argument. Like, I get it, maybe it turns you off, but I don't know, just push past it. I was able to push past it. So, anyway, I see some more comments here. I'll pause for a little bit while I'm this is all I have no notes, by the way. I'm uh literally just riffing. Let's see, let's go back up here. Um, I really appreciate the framing of Isaiah's job from the video. I'm gonna get into that because there's a lot there, obviously, as a Christian, and the Isaiah's job thing, that's right up my alley. I didn't notice. You look fine. I appreciate that, Alt. Uh, RIP. Thanks for saying RIP to Dave. The doctor told me I have better than 20 or 2022. God. Oh man, the Zulu memery is completely out of hand. I can't even say the what was that? You did like a cover Zulu of the Hail Hitler song, and like just trying to say that, like that is such a tongue twister to try to say all those words in a row. Um I will say the one thing I don't get, which you don't have to put in the comments, but I don't I tried looking this up. I don't know what even Liquid Zulu means. I mean, I think my Google search said that maybe liquid is some kind of like like a um market or capitalist term or something that like you can be easily transferred into value. But keep in mind, like I'm a millennial, so like I'm 33 going on 34. So some of the, I think you guys use some Zoomer humor, some of which I get, but some of which just make old man jokes or something. They just go completely over my head. Uh, an op, maybe not, but a royal fuck up, certainly. Well, even Zulu kind of gives a nuanced take on that. I'll get into that. What's up, brother? Jose. Uh, Jose is one of my favorite listens, by the way, and I haven't been able to catch your show live in a while, man. But I do listen to almost every episode. Jose does a lot of deep dives on conspiracy theories, both modern and ones that are more in history. Fellow anarchist, libertarian. We kind of started around the same time. Um, great follow, great guy. Appreciate you being here, brother. Uh, Zulu should debate Sam Cedar. Zulu would decimate Sam Cedar 100%. Um, I mean, Dave, I think Sam Cedar was Dave's first debate. I think even Dave would destroy Sam Cedar if he did it again. Zulu should topple government. Yes, sir. Hody says, I think I agree. They started as radicals and became prags and MAGA. I don't think it started out that way. I mean, Archie and Hudak, I mean, even you, Hody, you were all in the LPMC saying it was always this bad is wrong. Whale won a grad. Oh boy. Clipped. Thank you. Publish it. I'll retweet it. Zulu X Zulu Dave Smith marriage counseling live stream when I'm trying, man. I'm trying my best. I'd love to make it happen. Dave does not deserve reconciliation right now. Zulu is not calling him a poison for clicks. He really means it. I didn't mean to say he's just doing it for but I even saw Zulu say something to this effect that like you could have said, I think Dave is a detriment to the movement, and that would be a softer way of making the complaint without like using necessarily the strongest language possible. That's what I meant by that. Uh, Dave on the Tower Gang actually phrased it, "Don't be a." I'm not going to say it, but yeah, no, he did say that. $5 super chat. Uh, Pyrotic Batman, you heard it here when a cat turns on Dave. Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. I pass on expletives because it tends to be sloppy language in the first place. Uh, you heard it here first. Not listening to Zulu is a skill issue. The kind of people who can't look past it are the type of people Zulu is looking to push away pretty well. And this is part of the different strategies, I think. I think Zulu very much is 100%, we'll get into this. He's just gathering the remnant. And actually, there's a symmetry between his strategy and LPNH. Now, a lot of criticisms of LPNH, right? But they have this the core of the strategy being we're going to message in a way that intentionally attracts our people and filters out the people we don't want. And that is part of Zulu's approach. I appreciate it. That's not my approach here. That's not LCI's approach, but I understand the rationale behind it for sure. Uh, Zalzai, Ziga, Zadzi, Ziga, Zalzi. Someone should actually do a cover of that. That's just that'd be funny. Oh, it was just a random name he generated. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, there's the comments are coming in quicker than I can probably read them all. I don't want to keep on stalling. I'll go read more of the comments later. All right, so one of the things Zulu said, which I thought was actually fair, was that even insofar as the Mises Caucus strategy shifted, that there's a version of it that works if you do it right. And I think he's actually 100% right here. I think this idea of leveraging the libertarian voting bloc, not just the party, but just the contingent of the population that is libertarian, to gain concessions from the two major parties, and usually the Republican Party, is a valid strategy for libertarians to employ. And he even says that and says that insofar as Angela and the Mises Caucus played a role in leveraging concessions from Trump, like freeing Ross, that like there's nothing wrong with this. His major critique is that they're pairing this with a detrimental strategy of splintering the base that they need to make this happen by pissing off the radicals. And I will say that one of Dave's biggest blunders in this whole saga, and I've on one hand, I'm going to say one of his biggest blunders, and then I'm almost going to walk it back, and you'll see what I mean here. One of his biggest blunders is that he has taken shots unnecessarily at open borders libertarians by like saying they're worse than communists, and then basically doubling down on that over time, even though I think he's tried to nuance it to some extent too. Like and then like when he had that debate with Alex Nurwasta, he was much more, he was pretty good faith to Alex, I thought. And I've even seen him try to be good faith more to Zulu and guys like Monhop and stuff on Twitter, even though, then I know he blocked Monhop later. But on the other hand, I think, kind of cuts both ways. What I said about people not getting so triggered by Zulu and his approach, I would say the same thing goes to Dave. Like, I do think some of you, like, this might be my first pushback towards you guys. I do think some of you are holding on to the worse than communist comment. Like, you're wearing it like a chip on your shoulder. And it's like, I don't know, at some point, maybe it's just me. I'm just like, I can't imagine holding on to a grudge over something like that for that long. I know there's other stuff maybe you could complain about, but anyway, uh, but certainly not just Dave, but I think the Mises Caucus as a whole, and I've been critical of the extent to which the Mises Caucus and even Dave sometimes block people and make it's just kinda like unforced errors of, like, making enemies where you don't need to make enemies. It's just never made sense to me. Um, so, like, and yeah, if you're gonna do this strategy of, like, leveraging a voting block to gain concessions, that only works if you have a strong, kind of unified voting block that kind of is gonna work together, and then especially on the party level, that doesn't work if you're bleeding members and bleeding money. And one of the thing I think actually Zulu could have touched more on this, and maybe he did and I'm forgetting it, but, like, one of the massive failures of the caucus takeover, which is kind of part of what forced my hand to say, "No, there's something wrong here, and I'm gonna withdraw my support and reevaluate," is the promise of the takeover beyond just, like, political victories or whatnot was that it was going to, uh, sort of, like, strengthen the party, that it would bring in more members and bring in more money, and that did not materialize. It just didn't. And maybe, like, in the first year or so, there were certain excuses that could be made and certain deflections, and maybe there was, like, some reason to hope that, like, there was a dip, but that it would turn around, but we never saw that materialize. And at some point, I was just like, "I don't care what the strategy is for the Libertarian Party, no strategy works when you're bleeding members and bleeding money." And at some point, even though I still like you guys, you're not doing a good job and something's got to change. So, and it felt like not enough people were taking, there's too much finger pointing. The board became very ineffective at one point, and a lot of them just didn't seem to be doing their job. And the caucus was just kind of like internally divided on how to handle these things. And I just kind of felt like, I felt kind of guilty and responsible. I was like, man, I did a lot of heavy lifting to put these people in a position to do this takeover. And now it's just kind of embarrassing that we're bleeding money and bleeding members. So, so yeah, that was one of the things I thought like maybe Zulu could have uh, touched on more in terms of the failure of the caucus. But it plays into his greater point about how you can like Zulu's not like there are people in this chat actually like Hodie's in the chat. I see Phil's in the chat, they are really against that like kingmaker strategy, and maybe they're okay with trying to gain concessions, but they're not okay with the idea of doing that in a way where you like run a candidate who's willing to drop out if you get a certain concession. Um, but it's like uh Zulu is not even like he's not mimicking their argument. He's saying, sure, do that, right? But you can't do it if you don't have a unified base. And if you're just kind of like, crapping on a lot of the people who would otherwise support you. The Mises Caucus started out with this idea of like the 80-20 rule that like in the platform, it was silent on immigration and it was silent on abortion because it was like, hey, we don't all agree on this stuff. But why don't we just kind of put that stuff to the side and focus on war and monetary policy and criminal justice and a few other things that we're unified on and just make a lot of ground there? And that was like, I still believe in that. I think that's the right way forward for the movement and the party. But they kind of at some point decided to, at least when it came to immigration, shift gears on that. And I even say that as someone who, like, I am to kind of use a somewhat ironic word talking about immigration, I'm kind of a fence sitter on that topic. Like, I think, and Zulu, if you're still listening, you can maybe give me like let me know if you think that this is fair or if I'm whitewashing my position here. But I don't think I don't fit in with you guys completely, but I don't think I'm like fully in Dave's camp or the Mises Caucus's camp on immigration either. I'm kind of like I kind of see the open borders arguments, even though I don't like the term open borders, but I also see the concerns of Dave and the Mises Caucus. Uh, but that's kind of why I think it's wise to like, now here's what I will say. It definitely concerns me that while I think immigration, it's okay to say we don't want to focus on that. There are things related to immigration you have to focus on. Like it's kind of hypocritical to say we want criminal justice reform, and to privatize the police, but also we're gonna like, cuck for ICE, right? We're gonna completely bend over and praise the creation of the police state that's needed to enforce, not just like a, you know, we're not talking about like an Ellis Island immigration system, and we're not even talking about like a, uh, like what we have now is, I think, on pace to be, and in terms of the degree to which it's violating like the Constitution and due process and what that. It's worse than even what Obama did in his terms. So, you know, anyway, so there's a lot of those are some of the criticisms of the caucus that I think um that have a lot of merit. Uh and I think we're like, when it came to the caucus, those were the strongest points that Zulu made. That like even the shifting political strategy could be somewhat salvageable if you didn't do it at the expense of keeping a unified base. Uh, and again, it cuts both ways. I simultaneously, and maybe I'm being duplicitous here, but like I simultaneously want people to be less shitty to each other while also not being so thin-skinned with each other. It's a both and, right? Like, because we're human beings. We do have feelings. We're not robots. Uh, when it comes to criticisms of Dave specifically, um, I do think just pertaining to immigration, and I've even so I attended the debate between Dave and Alex, and what I said to Dave, I didn't get a chance to go up and ask a question, but I said this in the after party. I said, Dave, I understand your concerns about open immigration, but I think the issue is here that the cure is worse than the disease. And I think, even though I think Alex kind of lost that debate just on pure debate level, which I think Zulu kind of agreed with me on that when I watched his debate coverage. But Alex's strongest point on that, which I think is the number one criticism I have of Dave and the Mises Caucus's immigration policies, is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't call for a totalitarian immigration policy and object to the totalitarian apparatus required to enforce that immigration policy. So it it just doesn't work for me. Like, I'm all for not being an absolutist. I'm all for saying like, hey, like, maybe we need to decentralize and let the states do it, or maybe we just need to do the Hoppian sponsorship invitee system or something, or I don't know, like it just seems to me that even you here who were in Zulu's crowd, and probably actually, I'm gonna just go out and venture and bet that no matter who's here, because some of you are the Zulu crowd, and the others who are here, like Phil and Hody, you're open borders, but from the different wing of the movement and party. And I feel like everyone here is like, you know, you're more on the open border side compared to me, right? But you guys would probably agree with me to some extent that like there's a universe of options between uh open borders and this totalitarian nightmare that Trump is instituting right now, right? Like, so I don't know. Like I want to be principled. I also want to deal with reality. Let me drink something quick because I haven't. The problem of doing solo shows is like taking time to drink and whatnot. It's just kind of, you feel like if you have silence in the stream that everyone's going to mutiny. I have an idea of where I want to go next, but let me read more of the comments. I see the section still popping off. Uh, see here. I don't even know where I was. I'm just gonna pick a spot and start reading. I'll start with Phil. I saw Phil made a comment. We I don't know what this is about. Maybe I can figure out what you're talking about by reading it. We do this by destroying their wins on either side, forcing them. Oh, you're talking about like the concessions, okay? Forcing them to adopt radical positions. Otherwise, it's making deals with the devil and the institutions of political parties aimed at liberty must not be soured by dealing with the uniparty. Individuals can do whatever they want. I mean, I respect that view. I don't know that I entirely agree, but again, for me, it's just like a, how do I want to put this? I think in general, not democracy, because I'm not pro-democracy, but consensus. I think that whatever the party does, and even to some extent the movement, you need a broad consensus, right? And I think that even the Angela Mises Caucus Kingmaker strategy in its totality is a valid strategy if there was consensus and everyone was on board. But when everyone's clearly not on board and you try to force it, you just fracture the party, and then it becomes exactly what I think. I'm blanking on her name. You'll say it in the comments, Phil. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name. But um, the main female host over there at LP Alliance, where she's like, it's a strategy that like only works once, right? And then never again. I'm butchering that quote, but like the way she said it was, I thought, compelling. Monhop says, I will admit the block from Dave was considerably harder to get than the LPMC or Angela. Yeah, like I feel like I was sad when he blocked you. Uh, but I felt like for a while he felt like he was semi cool with you. I don't even remember what happened when he blocked you, but we hold on to the grudge because the premises that generated the statement have been maintained. Okay. That was from Zulu. Would it be helpful if the voting block was philosophically unified? Yeah, this gets into this is going to come up later. I might star this. This is going to come up later when I get into some of my disagreements with Zulu. Um, Matt says if he had been exaggerating, the grudge would have subsided. It was because he came out hot and then doubled down that the grudge persists. Uh, Again, I kind of get that at first, but I don't know. Like, it just feels like enough time has passed that I don't know. It's just maybe just different mindsets. Conrail said using blocking and muting to avoid people you don't like has always been a stupid concept. And in my honest opinion, when I block or mute people, it's not out of spite, but just not interested in content. Yeah, I rarely block people. I mute a lot of people because I'm tired of the showing up in my comments. Uh, but especially after they changed the blocking rules, it just kind of feels like pointless. One of the most important points from Zulu is that if you sell out your principles just to gain numbers, you are not gaining actual. Yeah, this is the whole fiat libertarians argument. We'll get there. We will get there. Uh, I think, this is from Monhop, I think avoiding talking about immigration would have been a valid decision. Yeah, I think fair enough. Or at least, again, talk about it, but like, hey, we're going to talk about it here briefly just to kind of like for fun, for like challenging each other. But then like, it's like a, you know, you have to do it as allies and then like not commit friendly fire or something. You're a fence sitter on the people's freedom of movement because that's what open borders is. I'm not gonna. I'm not. I don't mean to dodge your question, but like, I don't want to make this stream about my immigration positions. But uh, I did like a whole 2 hour at least conversation with Zulu on immigration and borders, which I think I still pretty much believe everything I said on that stream. So I'd recommend going and listening to that. And even if you disagree, you'll understand what I'm saying. Uh, One of my biggest disagreements or criticisms I have of Dave Smith was his endorsement of Blake Masters, friend and agent of Peter Thiel, who and using his influence in the LP to push the Arizona candidate. Oh, that was Arizona, wasn't it? Where Blake Masters was, and I forget that guy's name. Who was the one who dropped out? It's gonna bug me. I forget his name. I know what you're talking about. You know, we were internally divided on this is insider baseball, but I feel like it's been long enough now. I remember having talks with Heiss and other Mises Caucus leadership, and we were even like, we had Dave's back on that, but we were kind of like, this is sort of like on the line of being within the realm of what we think is like an acceptable uh, use of this strategy. But I think it's fair to disagree with that. Vetting of LP candidates is another huge one. Oh yeah, so this is another point. So I'll pause here. I know there's a lot more comments to get to. Uh, at this point, guys, I'm not trying to grift. I want to read all your comments, but I might have to at some point. Uh, limit it to random ones or super chats. Uh, I always feel bad though. I hate people commenting and not reading them, but just for sake of time. So yeah, listen, Zulu could have me on, and I could tell him how, uh, and even what you said, Monhop. So on one hand, those are the two most public instances of gaffes of endorsements, but like in terms of just the total number of times that happened, it's the tip of the iceberg. So many bad decisions for endorsing candidates for office, candidates for intra-party positions. I mean, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. I actually, at one point, got really mad at Heiss because of one of his endorsements that was just a total blunder here in PA, which some people in the chat might know who I'm talking about. Yeah, no, there were some red flags there for sure. Um, by the way, for what it's worth, I never endorsed Rechtenwald. That was also one of my reasons for stepping down was over kind of the fallout of Dave not running. But uh, yeah, Rechtenwald, what a disaster. Even Dave knows it's a disaster. Like Dave blocked Rechtenwald and has like nothing to do with him. Um, I can't even remember everything Zulu said in the video about Rechtenwald. I should have watched it a second time, but that's my main. I like to watch things twice to really let them sink in, and 3.5 hours once is a lot. Twice is even is even more. Uh, Rechtenwald was one of those people that like. Listen, I'm a former lefty. I'm all for former lefties and Marxists becoming libertarians, but you should probably give them more time to season before you throw them out to be like the uh what do you call what's the term here? The forerunner of your movement and your party. Uh yeah. No, I was not a fan of the Rechtenwald. I tried to give him a chance. I had him on my show a couple times, and each time it was like I was like having to carry him. And I was like, dude, like it's like if I'm more inspiring than our candidate, that's not good. Because anyway, yeah, dude, Rechtenwald is such an embarrassment. It's such an embarrassment. Yeah, there's some comments from Zulu here I think I'll read. The thing is, it was Dave who exacerbated the borders debate. We're merely accepting his terms. Okay, immigration is to be a wedge issue. Fair enough. I get that. I get where you're coming from there. Um, I have reset the wedge to being in its proper place between pragmatists and radicals. And the border debate was always just one of many areas of debate. Dave made it into a line in the sand. Okay, thank you, Phil. Amanda. I could not remember her name at the time. So, is there anything I'm trying to think? I'm sure there's like way more stuff because it's a 3.5 hour video. There's so much to it, and I'm sure there's stuff there where I agree with what Zulu said, at least in part. Let's see. There's the candidates. There's Rechtenwald. Uh, the strategy, the not pissing off the radicals. Um, Let me talk about something that I kind of get, but kind of disagree with. That'll be a good segue into where I have some disagreement. So, um, I think that this whole fiat libertarian argument, which by the way, even though I have some slight disagreement with it, is another one of those things where again I'll glaze Zulu a little bit and say that it's he's very good at coming up with these I struggle with like I want to label things, come up with good uh names for certain concepts, and it's a brilliant concept that if you to say it in my own words, which I think is actually it's true that if you water the message down to a point where you're not just meeting people where they're at, but you're diluting the actual principles, you're not making real libertarians. You're making libertarians in name only or fiat libertarians. This was, by the way, originally kind of, we didn't have this term, but this was our criticism of the Gary Johnson and Bill Weld campaign, that it created a lot of fiat libertarians, that a lot of people came out and voted libertarian, but they mostly did it either because they just rejected Trump versus Clinton because it was kind of at the time the two most unpopular candidates in history. And then because people will say, like, Johnson and Weld had like the biggest vote turnout for the LP in like their history, which is true, but it's like partly because of the rejection of the two party candidates being so bad. And also to some extent, it was the most, well, I don't know enough about LP history to say this definitively, but at least in my paying attention to the party and in terms of prominence, kind of like the most watering down of the libertarian message that there had been. I mean, Gary Johnson was like, so like Ron Paul has that moment where he's like, getting challenged on legalizing heroin, and he's like, he doubles down, he bites the bullet. He's like, yeah, I would legalize heroin. I'm not going to use heroin. Who here is going to use heroin if we make it legal tomorrow, right? Like he just, masterfully responded. But then Gary Johnson's like, well, yeah, legalize weed, but not heroin. Certainly not heroin, right? So he did that on things of foreign policy. He did that on things of economics. They kind of repackaged libertarianism into centrism with a libertarian wrapper. And so, yeah, a lot of people got sucked into the party temporarily or into the movement temporarily. But to invoke a biblical metaphor, they were like the seeds that were planted in like the shallow soil that didn't set any roots, right? They just got blown away by the wind when they met any resistance of like actually realizing the implication of the libertarian worldview and philosophy. So it's a valid critique, uh, for sure, to say that, maybe Dave and the Mises Caucus uh, are in danger of doing this. But I think where my disagreement with Zulu comes is not, and this gets into the whole thing about like Isaiah's job, right? I don't know, like, so like, as I'm saying this, I kind of know like what Zulu's counter arguments will kind of be, right? So I'm gonna say that I think it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. I think that there are some people who should preach the unadulterated, unfiltered, radical message and attract the radicals and gather the remnant. I also don't think it's wrong to meet people where they're at and to not water the message down, but I think that there can be people who specialize in sort of like simplifying the message to kind of the most bare bones things and explaining it in perhaps less philosophical, less technical terms, but that are still correct. And even if it's like piecemeal, right? Like instead of giving them the entire thing at once, you're giving it to them slowly in like breadcrumbs until you get them the whole way. I don't think that there's I don't think that those have to be mutually exclusive strategies. I think that you're gonna have people who specialize in both. And I guess my disagreement is that I still think that Dave, not perfectly, because no one does it perfectly, and on certain issues, like if you want to say that Dave is creating fiat libertarians on the issue of immigration, I'd probably, in the spirit of compromise, for the sake of like debate and conversation, I'd probably grant you that. Like I could probably nitpick it, but I would probably just be like, whatever. I'll give you that one. Uh, but immigration is important. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to economics and foreign policy, and he even still does a pretty good job at laying out the problems with the legal system and sentencing and the need for criminal justice reform. And even, and this is probably going to be where Zulu like start to, either raging at me or at least disagreeing in the comments. I still think that when he does talk about the basics of libertarian philosophy, I think that he is getting it close enough with his simplified message that it's moving people in the right direction. Uh, Dave has even said this on his show. So, like, what I'm going to say here could be construed as like I'm taking a shot at Dave, but I'm not. Uh, Dave has often said actually something that I think Jose, if he's still listening, has like co-opted in his own creative way. Like Jose will say, like, I'm just a retard who reads books, right? And like that's maybe he didn't copy Dave, but Dave often has said, I'm literally just a comedian who's read a lot of books, right? And that like when people will give him be like, why is this comedian on Joe Rogan the one who's lecturing us on foreign policy and economics and like he's an expert. And Dave's like, no, fair enough. I'm not an expert. I'm not an intellectual. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not an economist. I'm not any of these things. I'm just a philosopher. I mean, sorry, this is what happens. I've been talking for too long. My brain's getting muddy. He said, I'm just a comedian, but I'm just right. Right. You think I've read enough to know what's right on these issues, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to argue for these issues in my own way based on my understanding of the issues. So, and I don't think that that's wrong. I think that, like, listen, you could probably, like, if you were going to go and like track every single thing Davis said on economics or on the non-aggression principle or on just pick the topic, other than like maybe immigration. Um, where even there, I'm kind of like I'm not fully in the open borders camp there, but I'm just giving you that for the sake of the stream here. Uh, listen, like everyone makes clumsy statements. I've made clumsy statements, and yeah, you could probably find things where he's wrong, but I just get more often than not. I think he's explaining these things in ways that are in like it's like he's putting it in layman's terms. And I think that there's a utility in that. And I think it has done a lot to inject libertarian ideas into the mainstream in front of a lot of major audiences. Now, I will grant you that insofar as he has a big reach, that insofar as I get the urgency that probably comes up in some of your minds, where you think because he has a big reach and because people do associate him with the libertarian movement, it is extremely detrimental when he gets it wrong, and that is fair. And if I was gonna critique Dave on a more personal level, and I think I don't wanna speak for him, but I think he would agree with this in theory. I think Dave has a responsibility if he's going to put himself as a sort of leader of the movement, kinda like our most popular guy, for better or worse. Uh That I think he owes it to the movement, to the idea, to the philosophy, to even if it's hard, like, I get how busy he is. Uh, like, he's traveling around a lot, he's a full-time comedian and a full-time podcaster, and he's a dad and he has kids. So, I actually do stick up for him to some extent when he turns down conversations with people who, like, not like I'm not as busy as him, at least in certain ways. Like, I'm not anywhere near his level at podcasting and online content yet. If I even ever get to like half of that, right, I'd be uh, grateful and yeah, really grateful for that. By the way, please subscribe. uh, and give me money. I'd love to do this full time. Uh, Not there yet. Working on it. I mean, I think Jose is in the same boat. Like we're both doing a lot better than when we started out, but not quite at that full time level yet. But Uh, I get he can't, like, just stop and do every single, like, libertarian who's challenging him on the theory, but I think Dave does owe it to at least once in a while stop and go, "Alright, who are my harshest libertarian critics? Where do they think I'm screwing up? And let me actually genuinely engage in this to see if I need to do better on that issue, to see if I can, because he's he's got a tremendous responsibility of carrying this movement and philosophy into the mainstream and into the big audiences that he gets in front of with his own show, and when he's on Tucker Carlson, and when he's on Joe Rogan, and when he's on Candace Owens, and then Paul, what's his middle name? Uh, I forget his name. PBD. Just forgetting all of his names there. Paul something David and Tim Pool and whatever, right? So the stakes are high. I get that. So if he gets it wrong, there's a consequence to that. But I just think he gets it more right than wrong. Now, to some extent, this is actually, so I'll plug the second. So the first announcement, by the way, which I kind of already alluded to, but I'll say it again now that there's more people here, is that so here at LCI, we have a lot of books we've published. This is our flagship book, Faith Seeking Freedom, Libertarian Christian Answers to Tough Questions. It's like a question and answer format book that kind of gets into, sort of like what are the common questions that a Christian's going to have, especially about libertarianism, and we answer them. We're doing a second edition where we expand it, basically more than double the total amount of questions in there. And I've been one of the new authors added for the second edition. So that's going to be released next year. And that's a big announcement. Another announcement, maybe not quite as big, but I'm going to be hosting a debate between Zulu and I think Dan Sanchez is his name from FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. I hope I'm not screwing up his name. I'm really bad with names. I'm pulling it up now to make sure I didn't screw that up. Yeah, Dan Sanchez from FEE. I know the face because I've met him in real life, but I was like, I think that's his name. Yeah, so I'm going to be hosting a debate between the two of them on this topic. I am more on Dan's side here, but I want to give Zulu the because I think there's a legitimate concern about, even if he's kind of good on some of these things, does the bad outweigh the good? It's subjective to some extent, but I think it's going to be a good debate. I think it's going to dive into. It's going to be an opportunity for this stuff to get hashed out more, in terms of where some of the divisions are within the movement on the issues beyond just Dave himself. But that'll be Saturday at 5 p.m. No, sorry, 4 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll be making promos for that tomorrow. I think Zulu's already made promotions for it on his channel. So that's the second announcement of the stream. But yeah, I do think, I mean, listen, this is partly where I have my own bias. Like I said at the top of the stream, like Dave brought me into the movement. So, and I don't think I'm I don't think I'm a fiat libertarian. So, yeah, that's one of my disagreements with what Zulu said. Although it's not like I thought there's not a point there, but I think he takes it too far. All right. I'm gonna read some more comments and then I'll probably go for like another 10, 15 minutes here and then call it a night because I've already been 2 hours into this now, and I'm sure my wife wants to see me before the end of the night. Yo, my ninja. Nice. Look at the success of Nick Fuentes. He is dominating the right by doing exactly what I am doing. The milquetoast strategy is simply dead. Well, I don't think what Dave is doing is milquetoast. I mean, I guess he would say he's not milquetoast in terms of energy or style. Maybe you think he's watering down the message too much, but I don't even know. Like, I don't think he's watering down. So, like, listen, for sake of argument, let's say he's wrong on immigration, but I think on the other things, it's he's just putting it in layman's terms. I don't think it's milquetoast. Cody said, I agree with different messaging strategies. Ezekiel did symbolic displays to show people what Isaiah vocalized. The issue would be if Jeremiah came in and said, hey guys, war is maybe okay, actually. Yeah, and insofar as I think Dave, I don't think Dave is getting the immigration thing completely right, and I wanna make that clear here. Um, it's just I don't know that again, I'm kind of in the middle of these 2 camps here. So, sometimes, like, when I'm talking immigration, whether it's on a podcast or on X, on social media, it's like sometimes I'm getting a bunch of MAGA people and even Mises Caucus people angry at me and calling me a libtard and saying that I'm too pro open borders and immigration and all that. But then it's like I know it's like I can just kind of like cleanse the palate by do a timeline cleanse by just like let me just go into the Zulu Discord or just tag people I know from Zulu's crowd on X and then they'll call me a bordertarian or or something. So um Phil said, "You just taken more care to push right toward social values than toward libertarian philosophy." But this is another and Phil's someone I'm trying to get on the show too because we don't agree on the culture war stuff. So that's part of this thing that we have to get into as well. American Trapple said, "Why do you think libertarians should give someone like Zulu or Ace time of day when they admit point blank that there's nothing that could ever falsify their opinions? Seems like a waste of time." I see Zulu responded to that, said, "Nothing can falsify the truth. That's what that means. Nobody can falsify that the sky is blue. Okay, big whoop." I feel like I'm missing something there in that debate, but um, let's see here. Scroll down. Let me read some cast here. Catherine said, "You can prove their arguments are not true. ATH. If you do that, you win. I contest. I've read enough here, Jacob. I don't think he read enough and recently enough." I think Dave's issue. I think, and then Zulu. I see him saying that Dave doesn't know libertarianism 101. Uh, that'll be kind of what I end on here. Well, actually, let me read more of. I see Zulu is. Uh, I'll read some more of Zulu's comments here. Uh, Sanchez is a great man. I think you already watched the video. He was my boss when I was at Fee. By the way, just to do more, I'll make Zulu calm down after I disagreed with him. I'll glaze him some more. He's done great, like as good as he is on libertarian legal theory. He's also great on the economics. He did this great video on like imagine like the whole story about how a pencil was made. He did it with the iPhone. I think you made that for Fee, right? Or you made that for it was either Fee or another organization like that. Um, was really good. I can't remember if it won the contest or not, but it was like excellent. It was like, this is the kind of video that you could almost show a normie to get them into libertarian or Austrian economics. So, uh, Zulu said, "Yeah, if Dave was just honest and was some layman libertarian who was just trying to get Republicans to be more anti-war and anti-Fed, then none of this would have happened. Dave instead said that he was the most consistent mother you know. It is ludicrous." Uh, yeah, so I think it's just different connotations of that expression, although I get where you're coming from there. I think Dave thinks that it's like he's consistent on the issues. Like he's like, I'm pro peace, I'm anti-aggression, uh, and my opinions don't change. Uh, Granted, his opinions have changed, and we could probably say he's not consistent on immigration. So, yeah, I mean, I'll give you some credit on that. Like that it's a fair point. I don't know if I entirely agree, but it's a fair point. Uh, yeah, Sanchez knows about Zulu's channel. Um, Zulu said, "Well, I made the iPhone video for a fee contest, but they gypped me on it, so I don't F with them anymore. LOL." Oh, I mean, I didn't watch all the other contestants, but of the ones I did watch, yours was better. So and I voted for it. So that is depressing. Yeah, I think that Dave has always been pro Tylenol. Oh, jeez. Oh boy. That's funny. Yeah, I think that listen, I would love if like we were able to get past the animosity. There's actually there are different ways to approach the NAP and the Libertarian Foundation. I think there's a lot of value in kind of the layman approach. Dave's approach is kind of unique. Uh, from my memory, and he didn't do this well in the Wilson debate. Dave was listen, and I've told this Dave already, like, so if you all remember the infamous Andrew Wilson debate, I'm the one who made that happen, kind of. I did not suggest they do a debate. I suggest they have a conversation about paleoconservatism and libertarianism and just like I thought they'd have cool things to talk about. Their second conversation that they did on Dave's show was exactly what I thought they should have done in the first place, and I thought and that was a really good conversation. I did not think Dave should do a blood sports debate with Andrew, and even Dave has said, like, he kind of underestimated Andrew, didn't know what he was getting into. I think Dave accidentally agreed to a debate, didn't really know he was gonna like it. So yeah, even he has said that wasn't his best showing. Uh, so he did not represent the non-aggression principle in that debate well. He's represented it better in other places, and the way he usually kind of leads into it. I'm trying to remember. I had it, and now I'm brain farting because of just a fatigue of talking for so long. Um, is talking about property rights, and so it's actually not too different than kind of like the way you do it, Zulu, where you're talking about conflict avoidance. He uses more layman's terms where he's like, he'll be like that it comes down to self-ownership and property rights, and property rights boil down to like he's even said that the Lockean mixing your labor with the land is not a good it's a very weak, very muddy argument, and that it's more about who has the best claim to a piece of property, right? And that's I think it's a more it's probably not even the most articulate way of putting it, but it's kind of the layman's way of talking about the way you guys put it, which is it's about for those of you who don't know, which I highly recommend if you're into this stuff, which I am. Zulu has like a whole course and a lot of podcasts going into a very technical, more like philosophical approach to explaining the nap in kind of more like a more proper syllogism. Uh, but I think Dave kind of like understands the concepts, but I think it's fair to say, like, again, this is where I think you can be critical of Dave. Like, I think he is a foreign policy guy first and foremost. And he does a lot of reading, but he does a lot of reading of history and foreign policy and what's going on around the world, and then being a political commentator and kind of like being in the moment of like what's going on in the culture wars and in the political climate. And he's not doing enough time of then kind of like uh going back and like stewing or like kind of like brewing in the source of libertarianism and like making sure he's well grounded there. So I think that's a fair critique. Um, so yeah, I think that's overall. Again, it's a 3.5 hour video, and I think I've not responded to everything in that 3.5 hour video. Uh, insofar as I guess like the video tries to make Dave out to be like a poison on the movement, and that uh I don't know, that Dave is not a libertarian and completely misunderstands the philosophy. I thought that was like that's where I thought it went too far. Uh but I think there are reasonable critiques of Dave and his approach and on certain issues. And you know, some of us will probably just agree to disagree on again, I conduct myself the way I want to conduct my everyone does that, right? It's freedom of association. I'm not going to tell you you can't hate Dave or give him shit. Uh, and maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe this is the right thing to do is to hold his feet to the fire, and that will bear fruit. But we will see how it goes. I'll read some more comments here, and then I'm going to close out because at this point, even though there is no alcohol in this glass, I am just tired enough that I'm gonna start slurring my words and coming across like I'm drunk. All right. Oh, I didn't even mention this, the whole part about me in the live stream and the maybe I should talk about this before I get off. I by the way, just Zulu, if you're still there, I did not in the statement that we at LCI published, if you read it, the introduction of that was saying, "We think the clip, even as you put it, doesn't provide evidence to what, like, Foe and Jack were saying, that Dave is literally calling for violence against them or against you guys." Uh, but that because it was a clip and it's, like, it's not actually reasonable for you to put 10 minutes of context before the 2 minutes you put in there. We were like, "Hey, we're like I don't know if you know this, but, like, because I'm not complaining, it is what it is. This comes with the territory. But because I'm in your video and because Dave's comments were then, taken a certain way by Jack and, Foe and others, and that he was on my channel, and then it's a Christian channel, we started getting some people asking what this was about, when did this happen, etc. And so we felt like we got enough people who were like, what's going on here? That we were like, well, we're going to make an official statement on it and be like, here's what we interpret Dave as saying. Here's the full context so you can kind of see why we think it's very clear this is what he's saying. And that's it. It wasn't, you know, trying to make any kind of slight at you or anything like that. So, hope that makes sense. And maybe you disagree with us, which is fine, but I don't think Dave was calling for I mean he probably could be more articulate in that moment. But again, this is why you should not drink whiskey on late night podcasts. Criticize Dave for that. Uh so let me see any more comments I want to read here before we hop off. Um I guess I should actually read Casimir's comment. By the way, Jacob, in the quote versus foe, the real crime is zero mention of the state. Yeah, listen, I think we agree that the state's the primary aggressor in that scenario. Uh, but I think Dave's point, which I kind of get, I think I'm less aggressive than Dave, but I have kids, and so I'm like putting myself like literally his whole thing was like step by step. He's like, hold on, if like I'm calling you as bad as a Nazi or communist for this position, like specifically to Foe on the public property thing. And it's because and he's like, and that's kind of the nicest thing I could say. You know, he's like, because really, like, if we thought about this in a real life scenario where I'm the kind of person who isn't in my position, who can't afford to take my kids out of public school. And so, therefore, the state is forcing me to put my kids in public school. And then you or other people like you are coming along and basically saying, because it's public property, we can't exclude anyone from it. And so, therefore, you're not just advocating for allowing drug addicts and pedophiles to be in the public schools with my kids, but then you make it happen through your advocacy or you're like the school administrator making it happen, that like, you know, at that point, I'm protecting my kids and I'm going to use force to do it, right? Now, I'm putting that in my own words, but that's what I think Dave was saying. Uh, and you could even critique it from your theory of public property and maybe say he's getting it wrong. Uh, but I don't think it's reasonable to say he was saying he was not calling for the murder of Jack's wife. It's just crazy. Uh, Absolute Jemmy to get Dave to agree to my e contrario and then explicitly call me out. I don't. Sorry, I'm probably tired. I'm just missing what that's in response to. Uh, by Dave's standard, Dave is not a libertarian. I have to do I have to do no work from that point. Okay. Uh Dave was drunk would have saved us a lot of debate words we just had. Oh boy. Yeah, I rarely drink on podcasts. And like, if I do, it's like I'll have one of these with a little bit of whiskey in it, not like I drink a couple and then get on a podcast. So, um it is, I will be recording a video soon to go over how I literally made 0 cuts in the relevant section of the clip. It is nonsense for Dave to claim that I deceptively edited the clip. Uh, I don't know that it's deceptive in intent, but I think it's one of those things where, uh, like, I don't blame you for it. I think other people are pushing that clip in a deceptive way, is the way I would put it. Because it's just, again, like, it's one of those things where I think it is harder to, like, it does seem out of left field to kinda, like, hear the final minute or 2 without the preceding 10 minutes of the kind of the opening we had. So, but, yeah, I'm sure we'll get into some of this come Saturday, so I'll plug that again before we hop off here. 5 o'clock. Sorry, no, sorry, for we debated 2 different times. 4 o'clock Eastern Time, Saturday, uh it's the 15th, right? Yeah, 15th. Zulu and Dan Sanchez. I'll be moderating that debate, and we'll get more into this. But these were, again, just kind of like I guess my initial thoughts, overall thoughts, responding to that video. Uh, So, yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Sorry, I'm really tired. I'm dragging now. I'm not used to going for this long, this late, but I appreciate you all of you being here. Subscribe if you want uh, to the channels. Like this video before you hop off so more people see it. And I will talk to you guys later. Have a good night.